Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Hamid Adamu and today we are diving into one of the most powerful CSS features. These features are pseudo-classes and pseudo-elements. Now if you have been following my CSS series, you know I'm all about practical real-world examples that you can actually use. Today is no different. We are going to explore the pseudo-selectors that professionals use daily to create interactive, accessible and beautiful websites. Okay, without wasting much time, let's get started. So, what exactly are pseudo-classes and pseudo-elements? Well, think of pseudo-classes as ways to target elements when they are in certain states, like when you hover over a button or when an input is focused. And pseudo-elements are even cooler. They let you create virtual content that doesn't exist in your HTML, right? So we are covering hover for interactivity, focus for accessibility. Notice I've been using hover for a while now and I've never explained it to you, right? We are going to cover nth-child for patterns, before and after for adding content and many more. Each one gets a complete example, right? And at the end of this video, we are going to create one real world example together. So we are going to build a product card combining all that we have learned, right? Here's what makes this tutorial special actually. I'm going to explain every single CSS property as we write it, right? No rushing through code blocks. We'll write each property, then I'll explain exactly what it does and why we need it. So grab VS Code, open a new HTML file and code along with me. That's the only way to really master this stuff. Alright, let's start building some amazing interfaces. So let's start with the most important pseudo class, which is hover. Right? As you can see here in my VS Code, I have two files created inside of my pseudo classes folder. Right? So I have my HTML and CSS files and they have been linked. Okay. So let's start with the hover. Right? Let's create our HTML. Okay. Actually, let me create a simple for this. So I will give it a class of hover btn, right? The text content should be hover me. Okay. So we have a button element with the class hover btn. Now let's add our CSS to make this button look good. Okay. Now I'm targeting our button with the class of hover btn, right? So hover btn. Now let's add the first property for this. I'm going to give it a background color of 349, so some hex color, right? As you can see, it gives our button a nice blue background color. Now let's add the text color. So I'm giving it a text color of white, right? Now let me remove the default button border. Okay, as you can see, it removes that ugly default browser border that all buttons have. Now let's add some comfortable padding for this button. I'm going to give it a padding of 12 pixels top and bottom, 24 pixels left and right. Okay, the padding gives us 12. The padding gives the button comfortability, and also let me add some border radius actually. So I'm going to add border radius of 8 pixels. Okay, And also let me add, actually let me give it some margin so that we can actually see the button. Okay, there we go. Okay, now let's add cursor of pointer. Okay, it shows, as you can see, it shows a hand pointer when I hover over it, indicating that the button is clickable. Now here is the most important property actually. So the transition property. Okay, so all. Okay, so this transition property makes all changes happen smoothly over 0.3 seconds instead of instantly, right? Without this, hover effects look jarring and unprofessional. Now let's add the actual hover effect. Okay, so when a user hover over this btn or like this, when a user hover over it, we want the background color to change, right? So let's give it a background color of this hex there. Okay, so it's kind of a light blue, right? So a darker shade of blue that provides visual feedback. Now let's add a transform to lift the button a little bit. Okay, so this moves the button up 2 pixels, creating the illusion it's lifting towards the user. Finally, let's add a shadow. I hope you already know all of these shadow transforms because that's what we covered in our last video, right? And it's been a while actually before we create this one. Okay, let me add some box shadow. So 4 pixel, 12 pixel. Okay, so this creates a blue shadow underneath, 0 horizontal offset, 4 pixels down, 12 pixels of blur, and blue color with 30% opacity. The shadow enhances the lifting effects, right? Now let's test it and see. Okay, can you see that? Can you see the effect, hover effect? So this is really powerful actually. As you can see, we have been using hover effects since. So I don't expect you to see this as something new because you already use it, right? Now let's learn another pseudo class, which is the focus, right? So focus is crucial for keyboard navigation and accessibility. Let's create an input that responds to focus. Okay, let's get back to our HTML. So below this button, I'm going to create an input field. Let me give it a class of focus or focus input, right? Let me give it a placeholder too. So let's say click or tap here. So it explains what the user need to do, right? So in order to see the effects, right? Now let's style it. So I gave it a class of focus input, right? So focus input, right? Let's give it some padding. Let's say 12 pixels top and bottom, 16 pixels left and right. Okay. So this gives comfortable space inside the input for typing. Now let's add a border. I'm going to give it a border of 2 pixels solid and some hex color here. Okay. Now let me add a border radius of, let's say, 6 pixels, right? Let me give it a font size of 1.1 rem. Right, can you see our input here? It's starting to look good. So 1 rem ensures the text is readable, right? It removes the default outline. Now let me remove this outline too. So this one. So right now when we click on it, you can see this black border that appears, right? So the outline border. Let me remove it. Okay, there you go. Now let's add some transition. Right, this one too should happen in 0.3 seconds. Right, so right now everything will change smoothly. Right, let me give it some width. So let's increase the width of our input. So 300 pixels gives us a comfortable input width, right? Now let's add the focus styling. Okay, so the focus Pseudo-Class. So it's like this, right? Focus. So this targets the input when it's focused, right? Now we want to change the border color, right? When it's focused. Let's say border color. Let's give it a border color of 34. So this blue color here, right? So let's try it out and see. Okay, can you see that? So now when the input is focused, you can see the border color changes to blue, right? So this is focus. So focus Pseudo-Class. Let me add some box shadow around it to make it look good. Okay, so this creates a blue glow around the input, right? So zero offset, zero blur, 3 pixel spread, and blue with 20% opacity. So this replaces the default browser outline with something that matches our design, right? So let's try it out and see. Okay, can you see that? That looks good, right? So this is focus, right? Now let me show you the first child pseudo class. So first child targets the first element in a container. So this is This pseudo class is perfect for special styling without extra HTML classes. Okay, let me show you an example using a navigation, right? So a navigation bar. Let's create UL. Okay, I'm not going to make it links for now. It's just an example, right? Okay, so we have this simple unordered list with 4 navigation items. Now let's style the list. Okay, now let's style the list. Okay, I'll select our UL there. Okay, okay, let's style our list. Okay, let me start by removing the default list styling. Okay, now I notice you haven't seen the default list styling, and that's because of this here. If I comment it out, you can see it there. Okay, so let's actually let me give it a padding of 15 pixels. Okay, so that we actually see what you are doing, right? Now let's display it to flex. You already know all of this, right? So this flex box arranges our list items horizontally, right? So let's add some background color. Okay, so I added this dark background for our navigation, right? Now let me round the corners using a border radius property. So let me give it a border radius of 8 pixels. Okay, so 8 pixels of rounding for modern appearance, right? Now let me add overflow of hidden, right? So this ensures child elements follow the rounded corners of the parent. Now let's style the list items. Okay, so select UL and then LI, right? So now we are targeting all the list items, right? Let me add some paddings around them. So I'm going to give them a padding of 12 pixels top and bottom, 20 pixels left and right. Okay, now let's give it a color of white so the links become white. Okay, let's add this property. So hand cursor, which indicates interactivity, right? Let me add small borders. Let me add small borders around them. Okay, so between the items, let's say border right. I'm going to add 1 pixel solid. Okay, so dark border which creates visual separation between menu items, right? Now let's use first child to style the first item specially. So this link here, the home navigation link. Okay, so let's now see first child pseudo class in action. Okay, so select ul li and then first child, right? So like this. So this targets only the first list item, right? So let's add left rounded corners for this. So I'm going to add border top left radius. Okay, 8 pixels, right? So let me give it border bottom left radius. Let me give it 8 pixels too. Okay, so this gives the first item, as you can see. So it gives the first item rounded left corners to match the container perfectly. You cannot see it now, but let me add background colors around the list item so that we should see exactly what's going on. Okay, so let's add a background color of, let's say, slate blue, for example. Okay, can you see the links? Can you see the border radius? So it only appeared in our first child element, right? Rather than all of the elements, right? So this is first child. And we also have nth child. Okay, so nth child, it looks something like this. Yeah, this one. So nth child is amazing for creating patterns and targeting specific positions without extra classes, right? Let's get back to our HTML and create a grid of cards for us to see this in action. Now, after our navigation menu, actually, let me remove this background color. Okay. Now let's add a div with the class of, sorry, dot card grid. Okay. So let's say, so the child element, right? Okay, so pattern card for the class, and then I want the text inside should be card and then numbers. Okay, so I want to create like 6 cards actually, so 6 child elements. Okay, there we go. Right, now I'm going to use grid to style these cards and the container. Okay, but don't worry about CSS grid, we will come to that someday. Okay, for now let's focus on nth child. Okay, now let's select the card grid, grid container, right? So card grid. Oh, you might have noticed I'm writing the CSS directly in the CSS file. Okay, so let's get back to our CSS. I just copied and pasted it, right? So let's display it. Let's make it a grid container first. Okay, so this activates CSS grid layout. Okay, now let's create three column layout for this. Okay, so grid template columns, So I want 3 columns, right, with equal widths. Okay, so 3 equal columns using fractional units. Okay, let's add spacing between the cards. So I'm going to give it a gap of 1 rem. Okay, so 1 rem of space between all grid items. Now let's add some margin too. 2 rem top and bottom, 0 left and right for the container. Okay, so we need vertical spacing around the entire grid. Now let's style the cards. So all the child elements have the same class. So the pattern card, right? So let's add some padding. So we added generous padding for comfortable content spacing. Now let's set the background color. Let's say EC F0 F1. Okay, so they are now visible, right? Now let's add border radius of 8 pixels. So border radius of 8 pixels for each card. Let's align the text contents to center. You already know all of this, right? So let me give it a font weight of bold, right? So bold text for better visibility. Now let's set the text color to this color, to this one here that we have been using. Okay, now let's use the nth-child to create a pattern. Okay, so pattern cards and then nth-child, right? So let's say pattern cards. Okay, we need to select, so let me say even for now, right? So what this does is it targets all the 2, 4 and 6 cards, right? All the even position cards. Now let's change their background. So let's give it this background color. So this blue here. Okay, can't see the magic. So it added blue background for all the even cards, right? So let's change the text color to white, right? So this is nth-child. Okay, so this is how nth-child works. And we can also decide to say odd, so all the odd positioned elements, and it will still apply. So 1, 3, 5. Okay, so this is nth-child. So let's actually I'm done with that. Let me cover another pseudo class, so the checked pseudo class. So checked lets us create beautiful custom checkboxes without JavaScript, right? Let's get back to our HTML and add some content. So below this, I'm going to create a class of checkbox container. So input. So input type checkbox, right? Let me also give it an ID of custom check. So custom check, and let's give it a class of uh, hidden checkbox. Okay, so here is our checkbox. So right here, can you see that? Now let's add some label. So label for custom check. And do you remember the rules of connecting the label with the input elements? I hope so. Because if you didn't understand your HTML well, you need to rewatch the past videos actually. So label for custom check, and let's also give the class of custom check. Okay, so inside of it, let's say let me give this span class of checkbox visual. Okay, let's say I agree to terms and conditions, right? Okay, so right now we have a checkbox input, right, with a label and visual element for customization. Now let's hide the default checkbox. Okay, so let's get back to our CSS. So target the hidden checkbox class. Okay, so this one, hidden checkbox here, right? So our input, let's give it a position of absolute. Okay, so we position it absolutely to remove it from layout flow, right? Let's add an opacity of 0. Okay, oops, our input is still there. um, Actually, let me check the class name. Oh, that's where the problem is. I actually didn't write it inside of a class. I just write it like it's another attribute. Okay, so now it disappeared. Okay, so right now it's completely invincible, right? But still, it's functional. All right, let's remove the width and height. So width of 0 and height of 0. So there is no visual space taken up, right? Now let's style our custom label. So select the custom, say custom label, right? Actually, let's confirm the class name this time, right? Uh, it's custom check here. So let's change it to custom label. Okay. So let's make it a flex container, right? Let's align items center. So this centers the checkbox and text vertically, right? So let's add some space between the elements too. Let's give it a gap of 0.5. So we added a gap of 0.5 frame, right? So this small gap is right between the checkbox visual and the text, right? So to make it clickable. Now let's add cursor pointer, right? Indicating that it's interactive. So it prevents this thing, the user from thinking that it's not interactive. Now also let's prevent the text selection. So this one, so user cannot select the text like that. So user selects none, right? So it prevents highlighting text when clicking repeatedly. Okay, so right now you see, you cannot highlight it. Okay, now let's create a visual checkbox. Okay, so let's say checkbox visual, right? So let's give it a width of 20 pixels, height of 20 pixels, right? So 20 pixels. Let's give it a border of 2 pixels too. So this gray color here. Okay, so I added a gray border for unchecked state, right? Now let's round the corners slightly. So let's add a border radius of 3 pixels, right? Let's give it a background of white. Okay, now let's add smooth transitions. Right, so it changes for professional feel, right? So let's add position for pseudo elements. So let's add position relative, right? So this allows absolute positioning of the check mark. Now the magic, styling when it's checked, right? So let's say hidden checkbox. So when it's checked, right? So when it's checked, and then we write this, we're not going to write it just like that, right? So so if the checkbox is checked, so when we click on it, we want, let's select the custom label and also checkbox visual, right? So this complex selector here, actually let me hide this primary sidebar, okay, so that you could see it clearly. So this complex selector, as you can see, it targets the checkbox visual when the hidden input is checked, right? So let's change the background color. Okay, so blue background for checked state, right? Let's change the border color to damn. So border color of 3, right? So we gave it a blue border in order for them to match, right? Now let's give it a blue border. So let's add the check mark for it, right? So let's say dot hidden checkbox. So checked plus custom label checkbox visual after. So like this, after. Okay, so notice we are using the after to create the check mark, right? So let's set the content property. Okay, so I added this check mark character, right? It's required for pseudo elements. Now let's set the color. So let's set the color to white, right? So right now we are going to do it on a blue background, right? Let's give it a position of not inherit, position of absolute, right? So for precise placement, let's center it horizontally. Okay, so the position is from the center point, right? Now let's actually center it using the transform. So -50 of both x and y axis, right? So this transform moves it back by half its own size, right? Perfectly centering it. Now let's set the font size 12 pixels, right? So let's check it out and see. Okay, so this is it right here. Okay, actually let me give some margin to this text here. So right here, let me give it a margin of margin left, right? Or let me just give it an all round margin of 15 pixels. Still not working. Okay, now let's try checking our custom checkbox here and see what happens. All right, can you see that? So the check mark appeared, right? So this is mostly used in forms. So for agree to terms and conditions, when you come across online forms, you will see this mostly. So agreeing to their privacy policy and stuff like that. Okay, so that's it. Now let's learn about the disabled, right? We also have a disabled pseudo class. The disabled styling helps users understand when elements can't be used, right? Now let's get back to our HTML and create some markup for that. So right below this container, let's create a div with a class of button demo. Okay, and let's add a button of demo button. Okay, demo button. So the text content should be normal button, right? So let me delete this one for now. We don't need it. Okay, so it's affecting our document flow. Okay, let's add another button with a class of button dot demo button, right? So let's say disabled button. Okay, so right now it's normal, right? Let me add the disabled attribute here. Okay, so I created two buttons, one normal, one disabled, right? Now let's get back to our CSS and style the container first. So the container have a class of button demo, right? So let's display them to flex. They're already aligned horizontally, but let's display it to flex. Add some gap between them. Okay, let's give it a margin of 2 rem and then 0 left and right. Now let's style our buttons, right? So they all have a class of demo button, right? So let's set a background color of, let's say, so this one here. Okay, let's set the text color of the text to white for contrast. Remove the borders, right? So let's give it a padding for comfortable clicking area, and also some round corners with border radius. So padding of 12 pixels and 24 pixels. And notice that all the paddings I'm giving buttons, I use this 12 and 24, right? You need to have consistency in your web page. Okay, even though this is just a tutorial video, but still, I mean, it's just a web page where I'm showing you different kind of things at the same time, but still you need to you need to practice consistency, right? So let me give it a border radius of 6 pixels. Okay, so this adds modern rounded appearance, right? Let's add font weight of bold for prominence. Let's add the cursor pointer telling that it's interactive, right? Let's add transition. Okay, so these are top two buttons, right? Now let's style the buttons with the disabled attribute. Okay, so the way we do this is that, so let's say demo button and then disabled, right? Let's give it a background color of, so BDC 3C7, right? So the gray background indicates unavailable, right? Let's change the color of the text to this color right here. Okay. Yeah. So we muted the text color, right? Let's change the cursor. I didn't speak much about this cursor property, but it's very, very important, right? So for now, it's pointer, right? Let me add not allowed. Actually, let me show you the options that we have. You can see we have alias, all scroll, cell, resize, copy. Let's try this copy and see. Can you see that? Can you see the plus sign it shows? Let's say not allowed, right? So this shows not allowed when hovering over it, right? Let me show it to you. Can you see that? Now let's add some opacity. Say opacity of 0.6. The lower opacity makes it look faded and inactive, right? So this is disabled pseudo class for you guys. Hope you understand it. And we also have this thing, pseudo elements, as I've explained in the first introduction, right? So before pseudo elements, let's start with before. Before pseudo element, add content before an element. Perfect for stuff like icons and decorative elements, right? Now let's create a quote with decorative quotation marks. Okay, so let's go back to our HTML and let's add this block quote, right? Let's give it a class of quote block, right? So let's add a paragraph inside of it. So let's say the best way to predict the feature is to create it, right? So the best way to predict the feature is to create it, right? Let's create a site. So HTML have tons of elements, right? It's just that we just can't cover all of them actually. Okay, so some of them you need to go and learn on your own, right? So you use sites like MDN, right? So Mozilla developer, right? MDN documentation and W3 schools. Okay, so let's say this code is cited by Peter Drucker. Okay, so we have a code block with the code and auto attribution, right? Now let's style the code container. Okay, so select let me copy the class from here so that I can't go and misspell it. Okay, so code block, let's give it a background of f8 and sorry, f8, f9, fa. Okay, some kind of a light gray color. Let's add a padding of 2 rem for spacing. Let's give it margin of 2 rem to top and bottom and 0 left and right. Okay, so let's add border left of 4 pixels. Okay, now I'm going to comment those top above, right? So let me comment from here. Okay, there you go. So right now we can see our example perfectly, right? So let's add some border radius around it. So the border radius, yes. So let's add 0 for top, 8 pixels right, 0 pixels bottom, and 8 pixels left. Okay, so as you can see, only the right side gets rounded corners, right? Now let's add the position of relative. Okay, position of relative, so that it allows absolute positioning of decorative elements. Okay, now let's style the quote text. Okay, let's increase the font size to 1.2 rem. Okay, let's make it italic too. Let's give it a margin bottom of 1 rem. Okay, so right now it has some space between it and the attribution, right? Let's give the text of the color to 2C 3E50, right? So dark gray for readability. Let's remove the top margin. Margin top 0. So let's select the citation. So the name of the author, right? Okay, so let's say font weight bold, right? Let me add some color here. 7F, 8C, and 8D. Okay, so I added a lighter color to differentiate from quote, right? Now let's add the opening quotation mark. So the way we do this is, now let's apply the before pseudo element, right? So select the quote block, right? And let's say before. Okay, so right now we are creating content before the quote, right? So using this property again, inside of it, let's say, okay, so we wanted it like that, right? Okay, so right now we have some kind of an error, right? So let me add single quotes and then wrap the double quote inside of it so that now it appeared, right? So I added the opening quotation mark. Okay, now let's make it large. Let's give it a font size of 4 okay, can you see that? Let's give it a color of 349, my favorite color, right? Let's position it absolutely. Okay, so let's say top minus 10 pixels. Okay, so it now slightly above it, right? So it's positioning from left, right? Let's give it a left of 20 pixels. Okay, let's give it a line height of 1, right? Okay, so let's use Georgia for the font family. So Georgia, right? Okay, so this is how before pseudo element works, right? So we can also create the after one. So we also have after, right? So we can just duplicate this and let's say after, right? So after, so let's actually let me say let's add this to right, and also instead of top let's say bottom. Okay, there you go. So we have our code block here, right? So enough for it. Now let's learn about the nth-child. Okay, so nth-child can create complex patterns beyond just odd and even, right? So the one I've shown you from styling these cards here. Let me remove the comments so you see it. So this one, this card 1 to card 6. So nth-child is more than just even and odd. Okay, let's create a product grid with it. Okay, so let me comment out these ones too. I'm going to add some other examples. Okay, let's say product grid. Okay, so I'm going to add 9 elements, right? So 9 product cards for demonstrating patterns. Okay, now let's get back to our CSS and style the grid. Okay, so select the container, which is product grid in class. Okay, make it a grid container. So display grid. So this activates grid layout, right? So let's create columns. So this one too, we need 3 columns of equal width, right? So let's give them some space between them. Okay, and let's also add a max width of 500 pixels for this container. Okay, so it prevents the grid from getting too wide, right? Now let's center it. Okay, so they are now in the center of the container, right? Now let's style the product cards. So product cards, it's just product, right? So let's set the height of to 100 pixels for each. So I'm giving it fixed height for consistency. Okay, let's center the content inside of it. So the text. Okay, so right now we centers the text both ways, right, using flexbox. So both vertically and horizontally. Now let's add background color of EC. Okay, let's add a border radius. So border radius of 8 pixels for modern rounded appearance. Font weight bold for visibility, and also okay, so this color. Now let's create patterns with nth-child. Okay, so select the product and let's say nth-child. So inside of it, let's say 3n plus 1. Okay, I'm going to explain this. So it targets items 1, 4, and 7. So every third starting from first, right? Let's change the background color. Okay, can you see that? Let's make the text color to white too. Right, now let's target different pattern too. So let's say product and child. Right, so let's say 3n plus 2. Okay, this targets items 2, 5, 8, right? So every third starting from 2. Okay, let's set the background color to, let's say 2ECC71. No, sorry, I didn't write the property. Yeah, so I added this green background for the 2, 5, 8 cards. Okay, so this is how, as you can see, it's very useful. right? Okay, so what am I going to show you next? So let me show you the placeholder. So the placeholder pseudo element. Okay, placeholder styling ensures form consistency and better user experience. Let's create a contact form inside of our HTML. So right after this product grid, so let's say form dot contact form, right? Let me remove the action attribute, we don't need it. Okay, so let's add this first input dot form input. Okay, let me add placeholder. Say enter your full name, right? So let's add input dot form input, except this is for email. Okay, let's add a distinct placeholder too. So your email at say example.com. So it's just a placeholder text, right? Now let me add a text area for message, right? Text area that form input, right? We don't need all of this for now. Now let's also give it a placeholder of let's say tell us about your project. Okay, so tell us about your project. So now we have 3 form fields, right, with different placeholder text. Let's style the form. So select the contact form. So our form container, let's give it a max width of 400 pixels. Okay, so let's center it. Right, so let's display them to flex. I want the flex direction to be column. Okay, so we created vertical layout for form fields, right? Now let's add some spacing between the fields. Okay, now let's style the form inputs. Let's give it a padding of 12 pixels, 16 pixels. Okay, Actually, let me give this text area resize, sorry, resize none. Okay, yeah. Let's add a border of 2 pixels solid and this color. Okay, let's add border radius of 8 pixels. Also, let's make the font size to be 1 rem. Okay, let me also remove the outline. So this line, we already knew it. So outline none, right? Outline none, right? I will create custom focus styles. Okay, let's add transitions. Okay, I think for this our text area, let's change the resize to vertical. Okay, okay. So you can now resize it from top to bottom, right? So our text area can only resize vertically. Now let's style the placeholder text. So let's say form input placeholder, right? So this targets all placeholder text. Let's set the text color to 95 A5 A6. Okay, so now let's make the placeholder text to be italic. Okay, so distinguish between placeholder from real content, right? So if we start typing, can you see that? Okay, now let's add some opacity, 0.8. Okay, so this is slightly transparent, right, for subtle appearance. Now let's add focus effects for the placeholders. So if it's focused, then placeholder, right? So let's fade it more actually when it's focused. So let's say 0.3. So let's try it out and see. Can you see that? Okay. Let's make it 0.5 actually. Okay, let's try it out and see. See it, right? Okay. So this becomes more transparent, as you can see when I'm typing, right? Now let's add slide movement too. So transform, translate x 5 pixels. So this slides right slightly when focused, right? Drawing attention to the active field. Can you see that? Okay. So this is how placeholder works. Now let's combine everything we have learned so far into a real project that uses multiple pseudo selectors together. Okay, so we're going to create a product card. Okay, let's comment out this for now. Actually, let me just uncomment the ones above two. I'm going to create a new file for that. Okay, so we have covered a lot today actually. So all of this, right? So let me go and create our project folder here. So inside of our pseudo classes, let's create another folder. Okay, so I'm going to name it project. So inside of it, let's create index.html and also style.css. Okay, let me remove let's let me close these ones here. Okay, so this one too. So let me close the live server and open it again. So let's select pseudo classes and pseudo elements apps. It went ahead and opened the last file again. So let's try this. Okay, there we go. So let's create our HTML structure. Okay, so the title, product card, let me link the CSS. Okay, so let's create a div with the class of product card, right? Let's create card header. Okay, inside of it, I'm going to add one image inside of it actually. Okay, so image I'm going to give it a class of product image, right? So okay guys, so I have this image inside of my folder with this name, right? So chocolate biscuit. Oops, the image is so huge. Now let me reduce this size. Okay, let's say 300. Okay, so I'm just going to paste in the all of the remaining HTML code. I'm tired of typing. Okay guys, so here we have our complete product card with image, badge, content, rating, pricing, and button, right? So let's start styling the main card. Okay, let's get back to our CSS. So let's products card. Okay, so this is our main product card container, right? Let me give it a width of 320 pixels. So fixed width for consistent sizing, right? Let's give it a background of white. So white. Let's round the borders. 16 pixels. Okay. Let's add some box shadow around it. Okay. So 0 offset width is 30 pixels. Then RGBA 0 0 0 0.12. Okay. So you can see we have soft shadow for depth, right? Let's hide the overflow. So overflow hidden for both sides. So it clips content to rounded corners, right? Now let me add transitions. Okay. So right now it has this transition property for smooth hover animations, right? So let's center the cut. Margin 2 rem and then 0. Sorry, auto. Okay. So this centers our cut with vertical spacing, right? So let's add position for pseudo elements. Position relative. So notice there's nothing changed, right? So with this position relative, we allowed absolute position, right? So let's add some hover effects to the main cut. So down below, okay. So product cart hover. Let's say when the cart is hovered, let's lift it up by 12 pixels. Okay, can you see that? Can you see the effect? Yeah. Now let's add some shadow around it. Okay, so let's say box shadow 0 pixels, 20 pixels, 50 pixels, uh, and then 18. Okay, let's see the effect. Let's see the blur. Okay, so let's style the cart header. Okay, and if you're wondering where for the classes, so let me show you the complete HTML code for you to see it clearly. Okay, so this is the cart, right? So this is the image, and these are the stars for the rating. Okay, so this is it. So right now we are styling this cart header here. Okay, okay, so let's give it a position of relative, relative. So this allows absolute positioning of cell batch, right? Let's hide the overflow. Okay, so it clips image to container bounds, right? Now let's style the product image. So product image, so our product photo, let's give it a width of 100%, right? Let me remove the width I gave it here. So this one here. Okay, there you go. So width 100% and height 200 pixels. Okay, let's add object fit cover. Okay, there you go. So as you can see, it covers area while maintaining the aspect ratio. So the image did not lose its quality, right? Now let's add some transition around the image. So let's say transition transform, right? 0.4 this time. So when the user hover over the product card, we want the product image. We want the product image to scale, right? So it should scale by 1.1, right? Okay, can you see that? So 10% larger for zoom effect, right? Now let's create the cell batch. So this one here, this cell batch, right? Cell batch, let's position it to absolute. Okay, so top 15 pixels, right 15 pixels. Okay, so it's now in the top right corner, right? Let's set background color, some background around it. So linear gradient are all friend. Let's say E7, A74, C3C. Okay, and the second color should be CO392B. Okay, that's it. So add let's add this property, oh, so the color property, to make the text white for contrast. Okay, let's add some padding. Okay, as you can see, we have a comfortable batch size, right? Let's round the corners. Okay, so pill shape, actually it looked like a pill, right? So let's give it a font size of 0.8 rem. Okay, so smaller text for batch. Let's make it bold. Okay, so let's add shadow around it. Okay, there you go. So red shadow which matches the batch color, right? Now let's style the card body. So we have this with the class of card body. So this one here. Okay, so card body, let's give it a padding of 1.5 rem. Okay, so this adds comfortable content spacing, right? Let's style the product title. So our main product heading. So this removes the margin top. Okay, let's give it a margin bottom of 0.5 rem. Let's give it a color of 2C 3E50, right? Actually, let me select, let me make the font family to be Poppins. Or actually, let's say Lato. In case you're wondering, I have all these fonts. I have these fonts installed on my system. Okay, so if you want, you can also go to Google Fonts. Okay, so you search for fonts.google.com and click enter, and it will take you to the fonts, and then you search whatever the type of font you want. So this is called Lato. Okay, you can download it, and you can also embed the link whether inside your HTML or inside your CSS using the add import rule. Okay, so let's continue with our project. Okay, where are we? So we added overflow of hidden, right? We added color for the product title, right? Let's increase the font size. Okay, so let's style the product description. It's basically a paragraph here. So the high quality, low fat, blah blah blah. Let's give it a color of this light gray. Okay, set the line height to 1.5. Okay, for better readability. Add margin bottom of 1 rem. Okay, so our stars here, display to flex, right? So let's add gap of 3 pixels. Okay, so right now let's select our price container. So this one here, so the pricing. Okay, display to flex, align items, sorry, not baseline, center. Okay, give it a gap of 1 rem. So gap of 1 rem, right? So let's add some space between the all and the new price. Let's say margin of 1.5 rem. Okay, so the margin bottom. Yeah, so let's add some space for the buttons. Sorry, let's style the current price. I'm actually tired and sleepy, but I have to do this because I promised you guys time. So select the current price, give it a font size of 2 rem. Right, let's make the text bold it too, so that it has this extra emphasis, right? let's add color of A7F4. So this light coral. Okay, so let's style the all price. So the original price before, let's say color should be BDC3C7, some kind of a gray color actually. Okay, also let's say text decoration line through. Okay, so this shows that it's the all price, right? Let's set the font size to 1.2 rem. So 1.2 rem. Okay, so this is smaller than the current price, right? Okay, actually let's add some margin, not just between them, but okay, I think so. For left and right we need 0. Yeah, and let's style the add to cart button. So let's say dot cart. Yeah, so let us span the full width. Okay, let's give it a background of linear gradient, so 45-degree diagonal direction. (27 AE 60). Okay, so we added green gradient for the action, right? So let's make the color of the text white. Let's remove the border. So this is a clean appearance, right? Let's add some padding to make it have more spacing. Okay, let's add some border radius too. So B radius, so B radius 8 pixels. Okay, so now we have rounded corners. Let's make the text to be 1.1 rem. And also font should be bold. Okay, and let's add cursor pointer to show its interactivity. Okay, now let's add smooth over effects. Okay, let me give it position relative. Okay, now we're going to add a button icon, right? So we're going to add a cat icon here, so right here before the A. Okay, let's say dot cat dot cut before, right? So content, so this cat icon here, right? Let's give it a margin right of 0.5 rem. Okay, so font size 1 rem, right? So let's add hover effects. So when a user hover over the card, you want to darken the background. 45 degrees. Okay, so now we have a darker green gradient, right? And we also want to lift the button a little bit. Okay, can you see that? I didn't add the transition here, so everything is happening quickly. Can you see that? Okay, now finally let's add some box shadow. Okay, can you see the shadow effects? I hope you can see it clearly. Okay, so right now we want, when the button is active, so when it's pressed, we want it to return to its original shape. Okay, so it should reduce a little bit actually. Cut active, scale 0.98. So let's try that and see. Can you see that when I click, it's decreasing a bit, so to 98% of the width, right? So let's create an insert shadow. Okay, so box shadow, insert 0.2 pixels, 4 pixels. Okay, can you see that? Now let's add some final decorative touch for this. Okay, so product card after, right? Let's say content empty, right? So let's position it absolute. Let's say top -2, right -2, -2 pixels, bottom -2 pixels, and left -2 pixels. Okay, and let's add some background. Okay, now let's add some border radius. Let's say 18 pixels, right? Opacity 0. Okay, so transition opacity 0.3 seconds is, right? So we want to show this on hover. Okay, so when the card is hovered over, so the product card hover after, right? So opacity, okay, so opacity 0.3, right? Okay, can you see the effect? Can you see the effect? That's really cool, right? So I think that's pretty much for this video. Fantastic. We have just built a complete interactive product card using virtually every pseudo-class and pseudo-element technique that matters in web development. So in modern web development. Now let me recap what we have mastered. So we use hover for engaging user interactions, focus for accessibility and keyboard navigation, active for immediate click feedback, and there are some structural pseudo classes like first child for position based styling, end child for creating automatic patterns. We also have form pseudo classes. So checked for custom Custom form controls disabled for unavailable states, right? We also have content pseudo elements like before and after for adding decorative content. We also have placeholder for styling form heads, right? Remember, pseudo classes use single colons and target existing elements in different states, while pseudo elements use double colons and create new virtual content. Always include transitions for smooth professional animations. Most importantly, we have seen how these selectors work together in real projects. You can create incredibly sophisticated interfaces with just CSS, no JavaScript required for basic interactivity. So your assignment for today is take this product catch code and make it your own. Change the colors, adjust the hover effects, experiment with different nth-child patterns. Try creating your own custom checkboxes and radio buttons. The more you practice, the more natural these selectors become. These pseudo selectors aren't just fancy tricks, they're essential tools that every professional developer uses daily. They keep your HTML clean, your CSS maintainable, and your websites accessible and interactive. Okay, that's a wrap on pseudo classes and pseudo elements. So if this tutorial helped you understand these powerful CSS selectors, hit the like button and let me know in the comment section which pseudo selector blew your mind the most. Subscribe and hit the bell icon so you don't miss any of my CSS tutorials. Okay, I've got some exciting content coming up on CSS grid, advanced animations, and modern layout techniques. Keep practicing, keep experimenting, and keep building amazing things with CSS. I'll see you in the next video where we'll dive even deeper into advanced CSS techniques. Goodbye and happy coding.